I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, May the 5th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Fast acting, small doses, easy to use, short withdrawal periods, made in North America, effective tulathromycin injection at an affordable upfront price. Go to macrocin.com for more information. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyards in Carthage, Missouri. Another big sale for their Monday feeder cattle auction here. They're going to be starting at 6 o'clock in the morning and expecting around 8,000 head. They'll probably beat that. They're famous for underestimating, unlike most other sale barns. But they'll have another good market here on Monday. Got a special cow sale coming up this Wednesday, May the 7th at 4:30 in the afternoon. So be sure and check it out. And they did have a big primetime livestock video last week on Thursday. They started it at 10 o'clock in the morning rather than 1 when they normally start their primetime livestock videos. They had over 10,000 head in that video sale. They had it there at the barn at Joplin Regional Stockyards. They had 9,800 in a similar sale the previous month. But including in those 10,200 head, was a little over 1,100 head of 850-pound base weight steers with a July delivery. A lot of those coming off the Flint Hills, Osage region out there, off of that summertime grass. And they averaged, weighing 8.5 as a base weight, they averaged over 294. So that's a big improvement from last year, big improvement from any other year that we've had cattle coming off the Flint Hills there bringing that kind of money. And that gives you an idea of where this market's going to be for cattle coming off grass that time of year. Don't forget about the biggest primetime livestock video sale they have with Joplin is their Big Bang sale. And they usually have that at a neutral site. I assume it's going to be over in Pittsburgh, Kansas again. That's where we've had it the last couple of times and seems to work out really well there. But it's going to be on Tuesday, July 1st. And every year it gets bigger. There's no telling how big it's going to be this year. But it doesn't take a back seat to any video sale. Primetime Livestock's video Big Bang sale, it's as big a deal as any video auction's big premier sale. But get ready for that one. Be thinking about consigning your cattle for late summer or fall delivery on that Big Bang sale that's going to be coming up there July the 1st. The air is getting thin, and we've been on this trajectory just straight up. I don't know if you can call it trajectory when it's just vertical, but that's the way we've been here for the last few months, and just getting higher and higher and higher, and everything is growing. Now, I'm not saying we're losing any ground, but we're not going to see the calf and feeder prices in your sale barns continue to get higher for much longer, because we're going to be getting to the point where we don't have enough runs to garner that type of a market. And when buyers can't put loads together, they're going to back up. They're not going to give what they've been giving in sale barns for the kind of cattle that we're going to see, because most people's cattle is going to be turned out on grass. So the cattle are all turned out. There's not going to be a lot of cattle moving. Typically from Memorial Day until we get right up close to Labor Day, there's just not enough cattle in your sale barns for buyers to really get aggressive and try to fill orders. Now, there's still going to be demand out there, but just no cattle moving, so we're not going to see our markets and our sale barns be that high. Now, the occasional special that they have, which Joplin's going to be having a big weanback special there in the latter part of June. Now, that'll be a big sale, but it'll be one of the few sales where there's enough cattle there to dig into. And any sale barn, occasionally when they have a big special through the summer, we can get back to those levels, but we're just not going to have it, day in, day out. Our index levels are not going to be as high because they're 7-day moving average, and they're going to have a lot of plainer cattle in them, a lot of smaller bunches in them, and so we're not going to see that continue to rise. like it has been as we've been going through this spring, and everybody's really aggressive for feeder cattle, which we're tight supplies of, and even more aggressive for stocker cattle, which we're even tighter supplies of. But, like we always say, and I say it all the time, we say, well, we're never going to see prices like this again. Well, starting in the fall, we're going to have fewer cattle to choose from then than we ever had, or we have in the last 75 years. So our numbers are going to continue to get thinner and thinner and thinner. These big cow and bull prices that getting in the way up sales. Bulls are back up there routinely selling over $2, and good cows over $1.50 again. You see those, it doesn't hurt these producers feeling so much to take cows to the sale and keeping their herd thinned up, really sharp. And then we're seeing a lot of people get out of the business because it's a good time, because all classes of cattle are near record highs. So we've seen a lot of dispersals, and when we see dispersals like that, we see a lot of cows go to kill, just like you always do when you have those. But every sale barn owner that I've talked to in the last 2 or 3 months has told me that they have been selling a lot more cows going to slaughter than they have any cows going back to the country. And including replacement heifers, just a lot more cows going to slaughter. So as long as we continue to do that, our herd sizes are going to get smaller and smaller. And we've talked at length about all the reasons that the size of our cow herd in this nation is getting smaller with urban sprawl, and we've got conservation coming in and hunting preserves and all that kind of thing. And people just don't want to do that kind of work anymore. A lot of the people in agriculture, for some reason, would rather drive a $500,000 tractor than they would pull a calf in the mud. And I guess just on the surface you can see that, although those of us that like the cattle industry, we have a love for it, and that is the reason why most people still raise cattle, is because they love it. And I shouldn't say sadly, but unfortunately, a lot of the people that raise cattle nowadays raise it because they love it and always have wanted to do it, but they're not necessarily in the business, and they don't know a hell of a lot about what they're doing. And so it's a little bit harder to follow what their trends are, because they're not the old hardcore cow-calf producers that we used to have. And we get a lot more hobby farmers in there, and then they're the ones that have worked hard and made money and are able to have big enough places where they can run cattle. But we see more and more of that all the time. But our supplies are gonna continue to be tight. Will that keep demand up? We don't know. And some of these big prices, I was talking with a friend of mine the other day about what steaks are costing in Walmart, and the retail price of them. Of course, the retail price is at all-time record highs now. They track that, USDA does. It's even higher than it was during COVID, when we thought it was out of sight, and they were gouging and everything else. But as far as Walmart, the steaks, of course, they're higher there, but they're not commensurate with how much higher cattle have gotten. And so, we feel like we're getting a pretty good deal there. Now, they're going to continue to make those prices higher as the high price trickles from the cattle to the carcasses and finally to the steaks. And then, of course, whenever you get grilling demand in there and there's more people after them, they'll raise the prices for that. But we just don't know at what point that the consumers are going to back up. So will we see them consistently start backing up after these prices get higher? Will they stop going to the steakhouses? I don't know. I just like I've said before, go by a Texas Roadhouse almost any time and you have to wait in line to get in there. And it's not just that chain, there's a lot of others in there. People love to go out and eat steaks. But whenever we see these steakhouses start to change their menus is whenever the prices are going to get up there higher, and a lot of them have changed their menus, but it costs a lot for a restaurant to reprint menus and put them out. And when they do, they're going to raise the prices high enough to where they think they won't have to do it again for a while. And that's the prices that the people that are going out to eat will pay. And that could be a point when people start backing up a little bit. But, you know, Trump's doing a good job. The inflation's backing down a little bit. Everybody has a pretty positive outlook about life and things. And so we expect that we're going to continue to do it. I sure think I'm going to eat steaks as often as I want to, and as often as I always have. Of course, you know, I'm watching my belt line continue to move out, but I spent half my life growing up and got 6.5 foot tall. Now I'm just growing out. But we always talk on Monday, usually with a kind of a recap of what last week's reports were. We talked about the conspiracy settlement that JBS has done with RCAF and those that did that class action suit. And if you had fed cattle on feed that you ended up selling, and between 2015 and 2020 roughly, you might want to get a hold of your feedlot and where you had those cattle fed, because you may be eligible for a payment there. Or if you had a long position and live cattle futures there and took a loss there, you may be eligible for a payment there on that class action suit. So and then too bad if you were an AMA, some kind of a sweetheart deal, you don't get nothing. So like I said last week when I talked about it, some of the big feeders, the big corporate feeders, they won't be sopping up all this money. And there's a lot of money to be had there. I think it was like 253 million or something like that. But it's a lot. Of course, the lawyers are going to take their share right off the top, and some other litigation fees there. But we talked about the big price at Unionville, only to be achieved in a sale barn, where we saw cattle weighing over 8.5 bring 330, and all the things that had to line up to make that happen. But I enjoyed that talk. We talked about the Maud family and how the Trump administration has dropped all the charges against them with that little bit of property land dispute that they had in South Dakota, where they were threatening them with 10-year prison sentences. And it was just ridiculous. It was over some land that their family had been using for generations and generations. Nobody said anything until all of a sudden, and they made like they were really, you know, going against the law. But anyway, had some good ones last week, and if you didn't get to watch them, you can look them up on YouTube and go back and watch them, guys. Let's talk about your board from last week. June live cattle futures, Monday was up $1.35, Tuesday was up 60 cents, Wednesday was down $1.80, Thursday up $1.25, and Friday up $1.45. With June live cattle futures ending the week at 211.10, which was up 285 for the week, which is kind of curious, your board being so much higher for the week, because didn't last week the board just felt like it wanted to be lower all week long? It just felt like that, yet it gained ground almost every day and posted big gains high for the week. But it was just a bit of struggle all morning long, fighting the red and the downs, because it just felt like your board wanted to be cheaper, but it just can't. I mean, this is pure supply and demand, guys, and as tight as our supplies are and as good as demand is, you can't back it down. August live cattle ended the week at 206.77, so it's coming up too. May feeder cattle, Monday was up $1.27, Tuesday up $2.22, Wednesday was down $1.45, Thursday up 65, and Friday up 172, with May feeders ending the week at 294.95, up 443 for the week. August ended at 296.90, so that's a premium to what we're trading right now, and that was up 260. So big prices there, guys, and we're looking good through the summer. But like I said, you got to have enough cattle to draw a crowd to get those kind of prices. Look at your grains. July corn $4.69. That's down 12 cents a bushel. July beans ended the week at $10.58, which was down $1.25 bushel for the week. Hard red winter wheat for July, $5.41 at the end of the week, which was down 8 3/4 cents for the week. Fat cattle trade up through Thursday at 2 o'clock when your packers have to turn all that information in to mandatory price reporting. We had sold 78,000. You remember the previous week we had hardly sold anything through Thursday afternoon because everything sold on Friday. This past week we sold pretty much everything on Wednesday afternoon after the reporting deadline, but Wednesday afternoon was the trade. Packers were desperate. They had to have some numbers. They had to start putting them together. You don't usually see packers paying sharply higher prices at midweek. If they're going to pay the sharply higher prices, they usually put it off until the last minute on Friday, but they're just so desperate for cattle right now. You know, they're paying sharply higher prices on Wednesday and having them delivered, or they're going and picking those cattle up right then. So they're just hand to mouth right now, and it's going to be a hard way for them to get ahead of this market and slow it down because they are so desperate. But live sales of fat steers and heifers last week in your 5 area feeding regions sold from $2.15 to $2.24 direct, negotiated. That was $5 to $7 higher. Your weighted average on live steers $220.99, another all-time record. That was up $4.67. Your dress prices last week ranged from $3.47 to $3.52, $7 to $12 higher than the previous week. Weighted average on dress steers $349.33, another new record there. With your weighted average $7.91 higher than the end of the weighted average from the previous week. Friday we had a little bit more cleanup trade, but not much. Iowa sold about 1,000 on Friday, 36,300 for the week. That's the most Iowa has traded in a long time, over 36,000 head, and that's where the most quality cattle we have are at, is up in Iowa. Live sales $222 to $223, and dress sales from $350 to $356. Nebraska sold 300 head on Friday, 25,400 for the week. The only price on Friday was $223 live. Kansas sold about 200, just a mixed bag, steers and heifers. They sold 9,700 for the week, which is pretty good for Kansas. They don't usually get that close to 10,000, but the only price was paid on Friday was $218, which is where the market was at last week. Texas didn't have any sales on Friday, 8,100 for the week. As a whole, your Northern Plains market was mostly 222 to 224, which was $4 to $5 higher, and dress sales $350, which was $7 to $10 higher. Southern Plains market was $5 to $6 higher at 218. Box beef cutout values sharply higher last week. Choice cuts weighted average on all of last week's sales up $11 last week. We need to see a big rally in this wholesale box beef market if we're going to continue to support these kind of fat cattle prices, guys. And it's time. I mean, it's grilling time. It's spring. It's warming up everywhere. Everybody wants to get in the backyard and start grilling. But $11 higher on your weighted average. Choice weighted average last week was $344.48. By the end of the week, late Friday, it was about $1.50 or more cheaper than that, down to $342.90 on Friday afternoon. Your weighted average on all of selects last week, $324.12. That was $6.64 higher than the previous week's weighted average. And by the end of the week on select, it was another $1.25 about higher than that weighted average at $325.35 Friday afternoon. Your choice select spread there on the weighted average was $20.36, and all that information based on 475 loads, which is light of cuts, grinds, and trimmings last week. Your slaughter last week was very disappointing again. 559,000 estimated cattle slaughter. That was 4,000 better or more than the previous disappointing week, but 63,000 lighter than the same week a year ago. They, a year ago we were ramping up supply because your packers knew they was going to need the product, and they're just as desperate now, but they just can't seem to get the numbers that they need. Give you a few things to talk about. Here at DV Auction, we broadcast about 130 some sale barns every week. Some of them have 2 or 3 sales a week, so we're busy doing that. But production sales are our bread and butter, and it's been production sales season, and all of us that work for DV have been traveling everywhere, scrounging around trying to get them all done. We're on pace to do about 1,700 production sales this year on site, guys. If you're using anybody else, that they don't have the experience, they don't have the buyers, they don't have the contacts, they don't have the IT support, and they don't have the customer service that we have here at DV Auction. Your April DV Auction production sale report, we had on the DV Auction console, just on our production sales, not including commercial sales, 27,500 bids. It felt like I got more than that at the wolf sale only early last month, but we had 5,100 lots sold last month on DV Auction, and almost $31 million in purchases. So we do quite a business there. And if you're having a production sale, you're not saving anything by going with a smaller outfit, so you might as well get the buyers that we have. Another sale you want to check out, Farmington Regional Stockyards in Farmington, Missouri. I talked about the big special cow sale they had over the weekend, and it was really good. Now on Wednesday, they're having a pre-vac special, May the 7th. I think they've got close to 1,500 head, and that's big for down there in the southeastern part of the state. They are going to have a ton of 400 to 550 pound calves that are going to be 45 days weaned and had their shots. Now, where are you going to get them, guys? Everybody's been bringing the calves right off the cow because the market's been so good down there at Farmington. They're trying to get them used to these special sales, and they've got people doing the work there, guys, and you might as well take advantage of it. They're on DVAuction.com this Wednesday, May the 7th. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, brought to you by Specialty Risk Insurance, working to protect your livelihood. Your real-time index, based on an 800-pound cash auction steer, ended the week at $296.34. That was up another $1.95. And if it's going to hit $300, it's probably going to have to do it this week sometime. But your latest CME cash feeder cattle index set at 296.38. Don't forget about Beaver County Stockyards. Not this Tuesday, not tomorrow, but next Tuesday, May the 13th, they're going to have another Feeder Flash Beaver Clash Graze Out special. So there'll be some really, really nice cattle there coming off the graze out wheat there. And it hasn't been near as washy around there as it has been other places. They've gotten some moisture, but nothing like they have over in the meat of Oklahoma. But your cash feeders last week were all sharply higher, of course. Feeder cattle sold $2 to $7 higher. Calves were $5 to $10 higher last week. And stocker cattle $10 to $20 higher. Didn't really have any really big sales over the weekend or late last week to give you, but did have a lot of individual quotes. How about Lexington Livestock Market in Lexington, Nebraska? They sell 267 head in one whack, weigh 822, and bring 309.50. Big time quote there in Lexington. How about Dunlap Livestock Auction, Dunlap, Iowa, where they're going to be having the World Livestock Auctioneer Championship here in just a few weeks. 51 steers weighed 717, bring 340 on Friday in Dunlap. Market that I love to give you to so I can say it. Wahoo Livestock Sales, Wahoo, Nebraska. DV Auction broadcaster, they sold 126 steers, weighed 850 pounds smooth at $300. Big prices, guys. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere late last week or over the weekend in your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Montana Livestock Auction in Ramsey, Montana. They had several. They had a half a load of steers weighed 553, bring 440. They had a short load of steers weighed 637, bring 379. But the most impressive I saw was 132 steers, Ramsey, Montana, weighed 595 and bring 413. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.